All right. And it looks like my clock is now saying 4:02. So welcome in everyone to the Virginia Clean Cities Technology Happy Hour. My name is Sarah Slocum-Jones. I am our Research and Heavy Duty Vehicle Program Manager and our Chief Equity Officer here. Today, we will be hearing from Steve McCoy, Vice President of Business Development with Blossman Gas, who will be telling us about the benefits of propane autogas and renewable propane. So we'll go ahead and get this kicked off. As a reminder, we like to make these events a good place for discussion. So as Steve is going through his presentation, if you guys have questions, you can go ahead and feel free to just unmute and ask your questions. Also, feel free to utilize the chat. We'll get to the chat questions at the end of the session with the Q&A, but we'd like to encourage people to ask questions while they have them. And then also, as I mentioned, this is going to be a recorded session, and so everyone will be getting a recording about a week after the event. So look forward to that. And I think we got everyone on the list. So Steve, I will go ahead and let you take it away.
Well, welcome everyone. I appreciate those that were able to attend today. This will be a very informal, hopefully interactive type of information sharing, if you will, and just really briefly about me and more importantly our company. Again, my name is Steve McCoy. I've been in the propane business for, hard to believe, almost 40 years now, and so in different operation and business development roles. And just to make sure I'm clear, Blossman Gas is our parent company. That is our core business. We are the nation's largest family-owned or independent propane company in the U.S. And our division, Alliance Autogas, founded about 15 years ago by our CEO and President Stuart Weedi, is all things about autogas or utilizing propane as a over-the-road motor fuel. So kind of with that introduction, let's Sarah, let's get down into the presentation. And all right, thank you. So and bear with me a minute, I'm also looking at my notes as well as what screen you're looking at. So I'm going to get caught up to you here. Bear with me. So the first question that a fleet director should ask is, well, why would I consider running autogas in my fleet? And we refer to it simply as the 3 E's. Okay. And as you hopefully can see our graphics here, the first E is economics. And with autogas, the economics work. A fleet will save 30% or more in fuel costs compared to gasoline or diesel. Okay, we've got studies as well as real life case studies where that is actually the case and over a long period of time. It's not just a snapshot when diesel costs are up or gasoline costs are up or what have you, but this is over the long haul. We will save a fleet 30% or more in fuel costs compared to gasoline or diesel. Certainly bears repeating. Okay. Secondly, autogas is cleaner than diesel or gasoline. All right. Again, if you can see the infographic I've got there, first relative carbon monoxide, autogas is 60% less emittive, if that's a word, than gasoline and diesel. Second, looking at CO2, carbon dioxide, autogas is 21% less than gasoline and 18% less than diesel. And lastly, regarding NOx, this is also very important as NOx is getting a lot more press as far as how harmful it is to especially young adults, young children, etc. NOx, autogas emits 20% less NOx than gasoline and 60% less NOx than diesel. Okay, and last but not least, the 30. Energy security. You see that big 99% down there. That represents the amount of propane that is produced in the U.S. We are a a very large producer of propane, so much so that almost half of our production is exported. And what that means for U.S. fleets is it insulates a U.S. fleet from cost spikes and global geopolitical influences and so forth. So again, those are the 3 E's. That's what a fleet director should be looking at. And some fleets may lean more towards one E than the other. That's certainly to everyone's own opinion, but we like to talk about all 3 of these. They're all very important. And so with that, let's dig a little bit deeper. First of all, let's look further at the economics. Thank you, Sarah. And this is a simple spreadsheet that I can certainly send to anyone. You can download it to your computer, let you change the inputs, those in yellow, to your specific area and cost structure and so forth. But in this example, I am depicting one vehicle, okay, that you, a fleet director, might be looking at converting and plugging in the data for Autogas to see whether it might work for you from an economic standpoint. Okay, so this is a real life, real cost scenario today. And this particular vehicle, we're going to say it uses 3,000 gallons of gasoline per year. Again, you can put in whatever your specific data is, but we had to start somewhere. So I picked 3,000 gallons. And in this example, I went into the average cost of gasoline today in Virginia and came up with $3.25 per gallon. So annually, this vehicle would cost $9,750 in gasoline purchases at $3.25 a gallon. Okay, so moving across to the right, we're going to compare that same vehicle utilizing Autogas. Now, important to note that because of the energy density of Autogas versus gasoline, you're going to use 15% more Autogas gallons than you would of gasoline. Okay, but due to the extraordinary cost savings of Autogas, you're going to spend just over $4,000, $4,037, thereby saving the fleet in this one vehicle over $5,700 per year. Extremely compelling in my opinion. So I want to be very transparent about the cost of Autogas in this scenario. Like I said, this is a real-time fleet cost. Pick a county that's currently doing business with us. Let's say Chesterfield County, buying off the Virginia state contract, which is based on our Apex, North Carolina terminal, yesterday's closing, plus 52 cents per gallon freight and margin, minus the federal tax credit, which I think, as everyone knows, is 36.95 cents per gallon, call it 37 cents, which as part of the Inflation Reduction Act was extended through 2024. Okay, so that's how I arrived at the price per gallon of Autogas. Now, in terms of the second line, the ROI on this one vehicle, I'm using a conversion cost of $6,500. Okay, and then that assumes that this fleet is not eligible for CMAQ funding. All right, some areas are and some are not in Virginia, and Virginia Clean Cities can help you with that. But in this example, where this fleet is not eligible for CMAQ, their conversion cost would be $6,500, and therefore their ROI is just over a year. Okay, so as I said, very compelling cost savings. There's no other alternative fuel in the U.S. that save as much in fuel costs per dollar invested as propane autogas. I'd stack us up to any other alternative. And we're talking about the entire, not only life cycle of the fuel itself, but also, you know, the infrastructure cost or lack thereof when it relates to autogas. So again, just extremely compelling from a financial perspective. All right, Sarah, next slide, please. Let's dig a little bit deeper into some emission savings. And so whether you're looking at data that's sourced from the Department of Energy, as I have, or the EPA stats or data that I referenced in a previous slide, propane autogas represents viable emission savings, and it's perfectly suited to your fleet sustainability initiatives. You know, I like to say that with autogas, savings and sustainability go hand in hand. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other. And these emissions and cost savings are available today, not in 20, 30, 40, or 50, as we see in a lot of press today. But today it is available. And you know, I'm sure all have unfortunately been exposed to what has been called greenwashing by both private and public fleets, where you know sustainability goals and initiatives are publicized or advertised without a true time frame, where each year benchmarks and data goals are actually part of a long-term approach. And so I think we all, as well as fleet managers and as those of us who all want to be better stewards of our environment, I think we need to be cognizant and take a very accurate look at some of the data that that's getting put out there. So you know, one of the areas that we get a lot of press, especially in an emissions perspective, has to do with EVs. And you know, I told Alan that I was going to behave myself today, and I am, but I do want to talk about emissions as it relates to EVs. Next slide, please, Sarah. So again, depending on what data pool that you're looking at, these carbon intensity maps utilize the Department of Energy data. Currently, the electrical grid in Virginia is approximately 139 grams of CO2 equivalency per megajoule of energy produced. So this is attempting to look at I guess a balanced perspective as to what is the CO2 carbon intensity of the grid compared to propane and then renewable propane. Okay, so if you look at 139 for the electric grid currently in Virginia, 165 is the national average, and then you go up one map to the middle of the page. Conventional propane currently is at 79.8 grams of carbon dioxide equivalency per megajoule of energy produced. And map on top represents a 50-50 mixture of conventional autogas and renewable autogas. And in that scenario, the carbon intensity is 52 grams of CO2 per megajoule of energy produced. So as I said previously, you know, don't get me wrong, I think we should all be much better stewards of our environment. And as the grid over the next 10, 20, 30 years moves more to renewables, the grid should get as clean, or hopefully even cleaner, as conventional autogas is today. There's that today word again. Autogas represents not just emission savings in the future, but emission savings today. Okay, that's what I'm trying to drive home here. So again, the next carbon intensity map, next slide, please, Sarah. Looks at another set of data. And if you'll look at the region titled SRVC, which covers most of central and eastern Virginia, from a carbon dioxide perspective, the grid produces 623 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour of energy produced, while propane autogas produces 498 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour of energy produced, a savings of about 20%. Okay, now looking at the NOx in this example, the grid in central and eastern Virginia emits about 0.284 pounds of NOx per megawatt hours of energy produced, while autogas only emits 0.01 pounds of NOx per megawatt hours of energy produced, a 96% savings. So just another way of looking at true carbon intensity, and giving another option for fleet directors as they're trying to meet sustainability goals and so forth and so on. And so, but before I move on, is there any questions from anyone at this point? Questions about the data, questions about anything that we've covered so far?
Steve, I have a question about your last slide.
Please.
So this looks at the amount of, let's see, per megajoule, is that megajoules of power that's created. So, and you show here the electrical grid is I guess less efficient at doing that than say renewable propane. But once you get the energy to the vehicle, an electric vehicle gets about 90% of the energy that's put into the vehicle to the road, to the driving wheels. Mm-hmm. Where most internal combustion engines only do that with about a 20% efficiency. So it's roughly 4 or more times more efficient for the energy you put into an electric vehicle to actually create miles on the road. So if you were to take that into account in this situation here, if you look at the actual miles driven, it seems like the electric vehicles would be overall more efficient.
Well, that would be true if you also, the same energy coefficient that you're looking at for the internal combustion engine, if you also looked at the source of production of the electrical grid, it also lose as much energy from point of origin through transmission to the plug, to the outlet?
No, they're basically what I'm saying is that if you put a megajoule of energy into an electric vehicle, that 80% or 90% of that energy will actually move the vehicle forward. Whereas because internal combustion engines are so inefficient compared to electric motors, if you put a megajoule of power into an internal combustion engine, only about 20% of that power actually is used to create miles of driving. So I see what you're saying about the inefficiencies of the grid, but I think when you look at actually what's delivered to the vehicle, that anything that's electrically powered is going to be much more efficient than anything that's internal combustion engine powered.
Okay, I would again, I would, in terms of coefficients of energy, you know, again, from point of producing electricity, regardless of what power plant it comes from, to the outlet, which is where that electric vehicle is going to get its charge, it loses what, 75% of its original juice power.
Well, I don't know. I guess these numbers that you're showing up here, is that what's delivered to the vehicle? You know, is that at the outlet basically? You know, the charge point, or is that at the wheel, at the wheels of the vehicle driving down the road? That's the real question.
It is, and what this depicts is, well, we call it a well to wheels type of scenario, and we've been very, as we're looking at in this case DOE data, been very cognizant to look at that complete well to wheels and understanding, yes, the coefficient of energy of the internal combustion engine, but also the coefficient of energy of the electrical grid and how it produces electricity, but more importantly, how it transmits electricity and loses its efficiency over transmission. So if I'm thinking about it correctly, and we're thinking about it correctly as an industry, they're essentially the same types of losses, whether it's an internal combustion engine or the transmission of electricity. And if that's the case, then looking at this on a grams of CO2 per megajoule produced should be, and forgive me, I'm not an engineer, but it should represent an apples to apples comparison.
And I'll just chime in to say that I love everyone. But if we could maybe keep moving through, if there's any more decks. And this is why I'm really a big proponent of, selling technology for its benefit over gasoline and diesel primarily. And so I love everybody, and I'm just hoping we can keep rolling in case there's a other line of questions than this important sideline. And I'm glad that we're there, but if we could keep going for a little bit, and I love everyone.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate that. All right, moving right along. Let's see, Sarah, next one after that, please. Okay, so looking at the 3 E's as we've done, and whether you're from a vehicle standpoint, whether we're talking about Alliance Autogas and our EPA vehicle systems. Next slide, please, Sarah. Or whether you're talking about a Roush dedicated system. You've seen those on propane powered school buses. You've seen those on beverage vehicles. So, regardless of what the vehicle system is, next slide, please. And regardless of, next slide, Sarah, there you go. Regardless of what size vehicle we're talking about, all the way from class 1 up through 3 and 4. Next slide, please, Sarah. We're moving on now. All the way up to class 7. Propane Autogas represents those 3 E's as I mentioned. And so so let's move from the vehicle perspective for a moment. Let's talk about refueling, because again, next slide, because it is an area in which Autogas truly shines, and that is its refueling infrastructure. You can have several different configurations. It can be a single tank and dispenser on your site. It can be a shared site. You could fill at one of the 80 Blossman branches. We've got all 3 of those scenarios. Next slide, please, Sarah. We've got all 3 of those scenarios. Let's see. Sorry, I got lost there. Scenario at several Virginia fleets currently, Spotsylvania, Chesterfield, New Kent, et cetera, where all 3 systems are underway or being taken advantage of. Fredericksburg, for example, our branch office has a 24/7, just like the station or the dispenser you see here in the photo, where Spotsylvania Sheriff vehicles come at any day, time of day, et cetera, and get refueled. Okay. Next slide, please. Most of our fleets request and enjoy the benefits of having on-site refueling. One of the advantages of propane autogas is that it is very scalable, and relative other alternative fuels, such as CNG, is relatively inexpensive to deploy. So the scalability and the ease of deployment is one terrific advantage of propane autogas versus some other alternative fuels. This is a 1,000 gallon tank, which might support, depending on mileage, 10 to 15 vehicles in a fleet. Should the fleet grow and scale, so can the infrastructure. We can add a 1,000 gallon tank to that. In the case of Chesterfield County, we have 4 refueling locations spread throughout the county now. So Alliance Autogas and Blossman Gas are ready to move and scale as your fleet moves and scales. Okay. Next slide, please, Sarah. Simple dispensing. And so what you see there on the bottom photograph is our card lock scenario, where whether it's your fleet or whether it's the Blossman fleet, we all have our card that we simply put into our Triton dispenser, and as a fuel management piece, we're able to access fuel management reports. Those can be downloaded into an existing fuel management report in whatever file or function that you'd like, Excel, etc. The fueling process is at the same rate as gasoline or diesel, which is huge. Time is money. So 10 to 12 gallons per minute is what you'll realize from an autogas dispenser, in addition to having the refueling piece of it and the fuel management piece. And so next slide, please, Sarah. So moving to the future, which, as I've been saying, is as it relates to propane autogas is today, and renewable, which Virginia Clean Cities and Alliance Autogas first did at the city of Petersburg, hard to believe, almost a year ago now, introduced the first renewable propane into a fleet in Virginia. And so this is very exciting news. Next slide, please. And back in 2019, Blossman Gas and our Alliance Gas partner out on the West Coast, Blue Star Gas, first went to REG, the Renewable Energy Group, and purchased the first 6 million gallons of renewable propane and brought it into the U.S. REG has since been acquired by Chevron and plans to exponentially expand its gallonage offering of renewable propane. And that same plant in Geisner, Louisiana, also processes renewable diesel as part of the same process, where animal fats, plant fats are turned into glycerin and then create a low carbon renewable propane. Okay. One of the beauties about renewable propane, it's perfectly fungible. It's a drop-in fuel to existing infrastructure, vehicles, etc. And then next slide, please. Just about 30 days ago, we, Blossman Gas, announced a new consortium to include not only Blossman, but, as I said, our West Coast partner, Blue Star Gas, Paraco Gas up in New England, NGL Supply Company, which is a midstream company throughout the U.S., and Cavagna Group, which is a LPG equipment company in Italy and the rest of Europe. this consortium was announced, and next slide, please. So very exciting, and our President and CEO Stuart Weedi, who is also the President and CEO of this new consortium, Renewable LPG North America. I'll just read his press release. Our consortium recognizes the fast evolving and substantial need for affordable green bio LPG at scale. LPG industry leaders want to provide an increasingly decarbonized, greener LPG supply to support global emission reduction targets. Our Cool LPG collaboration with Bio LPG LLC and GTI Energy demonstrates our commitment to achieve that objective. And so the focus, as Stuart says here, is to bring zero and sub-zero carbon intensity autogas, renewable autogas, to scale throughout the U.S. And being a native Virginian, I'm especially excited as part of our initial efforts in this new consortium and new stream of renewable product is going to be right here in Virginia. We've already been in conversations with Virginia legislature and Virginia private entities to secure agricultural feedstocks that are currently used as fertilizer, and some of that runs off into the Chesapeake Bay, causing havoc to those fragile ecosystems. So we're going to take much of those waste products, whether it's poultry litter in the Shenandoah Valley or dairy waste and so forth, and we're going to turn these into sub-zero autogas. That's the goal of this new consortium. The players are all lined up. That is the goal, and in the next 2 years, 3 years maybe, we're going to see millions of gallons coming to market through this new initiative. And so I kind of I guess save the best for last, maybe, as it relates to our renewable offerings in the U.S. This is, I think, just absolutely groundbreaking that our company and other like-minded independent companies in the U.S. are taking on this project, and so more news about that, and I look forward to talking with you all and any interested fleets. And Sarah, go ahead and go to the last slide there, please. In terms of talking about your fleet and how we might be able to help and all march towards zero. So that's all I've got, and I would appreciate any questions.
Thank you for that. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them. If you also don't want to speak and you would rather put them in the chat, go ahead and throw them in there and I'll read them out to Steve so that we can get a good recording for when this goes up on YouTube. I can go ahead and ask the first question. Being a little bit selfish, as I am Virginia Clean Cities heavy duty program manager, and I know that propane can serve heavy duty fleets very well right now. I'd love to know if there's anything additional that you could say, such as good applications that you've seen in the heavy duty space, or if there are any limitations that you've found, such as like towing capacities or things like that with propane.
Great question, Sarah. As far as I said, renewable propane is entirely fungible with conventional propane. Molecularly, they are identical, C3H8. So to answer your question, no difference in horsepower or torque versus conventional propane, none whatsoever. Excellent.
That sounds great. Any other questions?
Steve, thanks for this presentation. That's an exciting announcement. Piggyback on Sarah's question, talk a little bit about range. Range is pretty good with propane, and I do have a follow-up question after that, right?
Sure, sure. As Bruce, as I indicated in my slide that showed a cost savings with propane, I mentioned that, 15% more gallons of propane autogas is going to be used in a vehicle versus gasoline. And so I also mentioned that there's by and large two ways to get there with your vehicle, whether it's a Roush dedicated or whether it's a Alliance Autogas Prin's biofuel system. Our biofuel system utilizes not only the range that we add to it from an autogas perspective, but also the original equipment gasoline range is also there. It works well for fleets that may have vehicles that do run extended trips from time to time. Having said that, I've also been involved in, just give you a quick story. Liberty University hosted a state track and field event last year, and there was a group of Roush school buses that needed fueling while they were there at the event. We were able to arrange that and so forth. So there's quite a robust network, not only in Virginia, but throughout the US with propane providers that will provide that service when needed.
That's why I was thinking of the biofuel vehicles. You can get even extra range. And you hit on my second question. Just tell for the fleet managers and local officials on the call, just tell us a little bit about the extensive network refueling stations in Virginia and North Carolina, a lot in rural areas, as I understand.
There are, and it's growing exponentially, actually. And Al and I were having a real brief conversation as the webinar was starting about exactly that. And because of propane Autogas's unique position with infrastructure in that it's relatively easy and to get permitting and get infrastructure installed, not only is there hundreds of existing stations throughout the state of Virginia, but we as a company have an initiative ongoing right now that dovetails nicely into this new funding, where we're looking at major markets throughout the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast, Baltimore, DC, Richmond, Roanoke, Charlotte, Atlanta, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to have a rather vast network of at least 5 refueling sites throughout each metropolitan area that I just mentioned, as well as 2 service centers. So we anticipate, once we get to 5, we're going to 10 and to 20 and so forth. So we see a need for not only what we call behind the fence refueling, on-site refueling, but also out there for the public and otherwise fleets to utilize.
Thanks, Steve.
Awesome. And Matt, I see that your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Hi, Steve. Say I'm a fleet manager and, I manage a public, municipal fleet or something, and I've got 100 light duty trucks. I'm thinking about, adding propane to my portfolio of fuels, but I don't reside in like a CMAQ area, so I can't take advantage of the incentive program. And I see that, obviously Alliance Autogas is on the PPEA contract with the state.
Correct.
So I know I can, get that the product, but how do you facilitate the conversions and the fueling infrastructure for fleets in areas that don't qualify for some of these incentives?
Excellent. I'll just use, if I may, City of Roanoke. City of Roanoke started years ago with exactly those types of questions, Matt. And so we went about training there. They have a very nice garage there, wanted to do their own conversion. So we set up a training episode with them. They come back for retraining to our R&D facility down in Asheville, North Carolina. So it's not only an initial training, but an ongoing training so that a public fleet can be trained to do their own conversions. That's typically what we see, especially with larger public entities such as Roanoke, such as Chesterfield, such as Spotsylvania. There are some smaller public fleets that do not have the ways and means to do that. And for that, we have other options for that as well. We have mobile conversion centers that can come to a fleet base. We've also had a situation where one public entity that had a larger garage facility and the training did the conversions for an adjacent county that did not. So we'll make it work with whatever size public fleet is interested.
Excellent. That is really great to know. And for those of you who are on, I did go ahead and put a link to our CMAQ page on there. If you're interested, you can check out if you are in that area. And if not, that is also something that Virginia Clean Cities can try to help you guys out with. There's rotating funding throughout the year. So reach out to us, reach out to Steve to see how we can help you find that funding and get your projects going.